Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another episode of Buha's Block. On today's show, I am thrilled to be joined by Sean Davis of Sports Headlines and the Los Angeles Lakers Network, multi-time guest on this show. Sean, how you doing today?
Doing all right, bro. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to break down these matchups.
Yeah, so on today's show, we are going to be ranking the Lakers' 5 potential first-round opponents from the best matchup to the worst matchup. And before we get into it, I want to preface this conversation by saying that I would pick the Lakers over any of these 5 potential first-round opponents in a 7-game series. So I want to just get that on record before we get into it.
Might have to repeat that again.
I know, but I just want to clarify for people that as we're praising some of these teams and talking through the matchups and just the chess match with how these potential series would go, I would pick the Lakers over any of these teams. Of course, there are strengths and weaknesses on both sides, but I just wanted to clarify that as of right now, the only team I would tentatively pick ahead of the Lakers in a 7-game playoff series is OKC, though I am much more confident in the Lakers' odds of winning that series after Sunday's blowout win over OKC, and I am open to changing my priors based on how Tuesday's potential matchup goes, depending on if the Lakers play their guys or if OKC plays their guys, because Cleveland just lost, so they have a little bit more room there with securing home court throughout the playoffs. But before we get into it, I just wanted to start it off with that. But the format for today's show is going to be 5 teams, 1 through 5, with 1 being the best matchup for the Lakers, 5 being the worst. And we're going to give 1 reason for optimism and 1 reason for concern. I think knowing both of us, we are probably going to give multiple reasons of optimism and concern, and it'll probably be a little bit more in-depth than just a sentence, but that's the general format. So Sean, you are the guest. You would love to hear who you think is the easiest matchup for the Lakers. I think we're in agreement here, and the show is really going to start with the second team, but who do you have as the number 1 matchup for LA?
The number 1 matchup with the bullet is the Memphis Grizzlies for the Lakers. Mm-hmm. The biggest reason for optimism is they are really, really suspect in the half court, in my opinion, specifically offensively, which kind of leads to even like kind of the concern I have for them. But the concern kind of plays into my point about the reason for optimism. They play really, really freaking fast. They do. They love to get on transition. I think that's, at this point, this season is probably where Ja Morant's at his best, is in the open floor. But Ja Morant's easily having his worst year of his career in the half court. You know, he was bickering and complaining about his lack of touches in the half court, where you're probably, and this may be a hot take, I don't know how you feel about this, I think he's their 3rd best half court offensive player by a large margin. I think Desmond Bane at this point is a better half court player than Ja Morant. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. has just been their best player overall this season. So, and I
make that case, yeah.
And when you get to a playoff setting where it's going to be a lot more spread pick and roll based, that kind of favors the Lakers a lot, in my opinion. If you're going to go Ja Morant 10, spread pick and roll possessions a game, the Lakers are just very easily going to switch the matchup and, crowd Ja Morant's space and make him see bodies and force John into shooting 8 pull-up jumpers or having to kick out to secondary offensive options and burn 8 seconds while doing that. So I just look at what the Lakers want to do defensively, and I look at when the games eventually does slow down, because the Grizzlies had 25 transition scoring possessions in their most recent game on March 29th. You're not going to get 25 transition possessions in the playoffs. That's just not going to happen. So you limit their transition opportunities and you make them play more in the half court. And they've kind of reverted back to being a more Ja Morant centric offense in the, week or so post Taylor Jenkins being fired or let go. And since then, last 15 games, they're 18th in offense, 16th in defense. There's just nothing in the half court on either end of the floor that's spectacular. And if Zach Edey's going to play a lot, then he's going to play in a drop and Luka just gets the feast. So just a bad matchup all across the board for Memphis.
I'm with you. I have Memphis as my best matchup for LA, and a few numbers here quickly. So Memphis right now 46-32. They're number 8 in the West. So if the standings hold, they would play OKC in round 1. I think that's maybe a sweep, at the best a 5-game series, but
OKC sweep
potentially, yeah, probably a sweep. Last 15. Which is as far back as you could go on NBA.com stats in terms of like the season segments without getting into like the months or picking the actual dates. Last 15, they are 7-8, 18th in offense, 16th in defense, 18th in net rating. So middling on both sides of the ball. Now, Ja and Jaren Jackson have both missed several games during that stretch, and they fired their coach, which with 9 games left in the regular season is always a great side when you could fire your coach and promote the assistant coach that you forced onto his staff the prior summer. For me, I mean, I could just lead with that of firing their coach with 9 games left. We just saw what the Lakers did to them. They are cratering right now. They have not been playing good basketball for quite a while. That's concerning. It's been almost 2 months. And to me, they can't defend the Lakers' perimeter stars. And that's the biggest thing to me, where, I mean, remember in this game, this was the game that Luka, LeBron, and Austin all went for 25 plus points, 8 plus assists. The Lakers scored a season high 134 points. It's arguably their best offensive performance of the season. I'd probably put the OKC result as the best just because of the caliber of defense they were facing. But prior to that, this was that performance. So I just think that the Lakers would have their way and go mismatch hunting against Edey, even against Triple J to some extent. But you could also pick on Ja Morant. Desmond Bane, I think, is a solid defender given his size and his wingspan limitations. But he's another guy that you could go at. I like Jalen Wells, but then you look at the bench and it's like, I like Santi Aldama, I like Scottie Pippen Jr., but they just have too many guys. Like, is Luke Kennard going to play in this series? Luka and LeBron are going to have a field day with that. So biggest reason for optimism is just Memphis is I think in a bit of a hole right now, and I don't think they could defend LA credibly on the perimeter. Now, concern, you had kind of hit on it. For me, it's size and speed. And I think LA would win this series easily. I think this is a 5-game series. I think Memphis maybe has like the one good offensive performance in Memphis, and maybe LA goes up 3-0. Memphis wins game 4 just to make it a gentleman's sweep. LA comes back to LA, wins it in 5. But the size of Edey, Triple J, Santi Aldama, Jay Huff, they got some big guys that can hurt the Lakers in the paint on the offensive glass, rim protection, etc. And then they also play really fast. And I think if you have a certain element of speed and transition play, you can attack the Lakers. The Lakers don't really want to get up and down like that. So that would be really my only thing. But I think this is a 5-game series, maybe even a sweep. And I think the Lakers, like, this should be the matchup they are rooting for.
Yeah. From here on now, I think there's easily something about the other team that you go, ooh, that can keep you up at night, basically, where Memphis, don't want to discredit them, but kind of like there's nothing they do that's overly spectacular that scares me. And then also Memphis they give up the 3rd most above the break threes in the entire league, which
you can pick and pop because of the dropping. You can pick and pop with DFS or Rui,
yeah, or Braun even like
or Braun, yeah.
There's just
or
a
Austin,
lot of.
I mean, like you could get really creative with it. Yeah. Gabe's another pick and pop option.
Yeah, there's just things that LA does. Everything that LA really, really wants to accomplish at both ends of the floor, I think, just favors them a lot in the series against Memphis. So easily Memphis number 1.
All right, so this is where things get interesting now. Who is your number 2 team?
My number 2 team is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I have Minnesota 2.
Unfortunately, we agree. So we're in agreement here. I'm a little concerned. Well, I think we'll have some disagreements in the final 3, but let's see.
A reason for optimism, I think, somewhat similarly. I think there are some scheme flaws for Minnesota that I think match well with LA and what LA wants to accomplish. They have a lot of good rotation players and good defenders, but they don't have a Luka defender. I think we saw that a lot in the Dallas Minnesota series last year. Like, Jaden McDaniels is one of the best defensive players on the planet, and our best perimeter defensive players on the planet. But Jaden McDaniels doesn't have the physicality to be able to consistently check Luka, because Luka, we saw it in the playoffs. Luka was able to just kind of throw his body around and just put Jay McDaniels in foul trouble to the point where, honestly, in the conference finals last year, the best Luka defender was Kyle Anderson. And really couldn't do it. Jay McDaniels, as good as he is, Jaden's probably going to be the Austin defender, or maybe Braun, but Luka, with his size and the ability to just put pressure on opposing teams' defenses, we've seen it now that, Jaden can't really check Luka. And then that also plays to the fact, can Rudy Gobert play? And that's obviously going to be a massive hit to their team defense. Biggest thing of concern for me is their offensive explosiveness. They've really hit a groove. They're third in offense over the past 15 games. And a big part of that is they've kind of figured some stuff out with Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle specifically. Julius Randle is a really, really good mismatch hunter. And for the Lakers, it's being a team that wants to switch a lot defensively. There could be scenarios where, and unfortunately, Lakers like to concede switches a little bit too much. So there could be scenarios late in games where it's not even Anthony Edwards. It's more so Julius Randle attacking switches and getting downhill and, hitting, Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Dante DiVincenzo or Naz Reid in the corners for threes, because the Lakers have to collapse and overreact. And then I think the Lakers switching could bother Ant because they'll just show bodies, but then at one point does Ant just go okay, I'm the third best shooter in the league probably right now on volume. So those would be the two biggest things for me concern wise.
We're largely in agreement here. So quickly on Minnesota's statistical profile, 46-32, number 7 in the West. So they'd be playing the Houston Rockets right now if the standings hold. Last 15, they are 12-3, which is one of the best records in the league over that stretch. You mentioned it, 3rd in offense, 10th in defense, 5th in net rating. They have they're 6th in net rating post All-Star break, so that they've sustained this stretch beyond that 15 game sample size. Optimism, for me, I don't really trust any of Minnesota's number 2 options in a playoff series. And Julius Randle, we've seen he struggled in the playoffs. You look at his numbers, and I think that there are some defensive limitations there as well. I guess Naz Reid would be the guy that I would have the most confidence in, but for as much as I like Naz Reid, and I really do like Naz Reid, I think he should be a full-time starting center somewhere. If he's your number 2 option in a playoff series, I have some concerns, especially against the Lakers. I also think, to your point, there are some ways to neutralize Ant with doubling and trapping and doing it a bit sporadically on certain parts of the floor and forcing him to make certain reads and forcing him to be a playmaker. And I think he has improved. Certainly this season compared to previous seasons, even compared to where he was last postseason. And I think recently it has been going well for the Timberwolves. And as you said, I think they have unlocked some things offensively. I still think that's really the only guy within their offense that I'm actually afraid of. So that I think the Lakers can come up with a scheme to try to take him out, or maybe let him get his to an extent, and you stay home with the other guys, and you just kind of live with, okay, Ant gets 30, 35, maybe even 40, but none of these other guys are really going to go off, and we're not really that worried about them. In terms of concern, I think on paper, the Timberwolves fit the profile of the type of team that should give the Lakers a lot of problems. They have the size and the interior with Gobert, Randle, Reed, even McDaniels, Ant, DiVincenzo, they got perimeter size and interior size. They're a big team. They're really good defensively. And I also think that they have an apex superstar in Ant, who I think if you're going to beat the Lakers in a 7-game series, you probably need a player who can match at least one of LeBron or Luka. And I still have more confidence in LeBron and Luka in a 7-game series compared to an Ant. But if you told me at the end of a series, Ant had matched them or put up similar numbers, whatever, I wouldn't be shocked by that. Like Ant is that caliber of player. And the Lakers, I don't think have a great Ant matchup, right? I don't even know if they have a good Ant matchup. I think he's too quick and shifty for DFS and Rui. I think he's too big and strong and athletic for Austin. Obviously, he can pick on Luka. So like they don't have a good matchup
Vando
for
plays
Ant.
12 minutes a night, so you can't even fully rely on
Yeah,
Vando.
I mean Vando would be the guy, but I mean I don't know if you caught this, but JJ made it clear how did the OKC game. He was asked by Kobe Price about Vando and his role and how Vando had been like creeping up towards 20 minutes a night, and then the second LeBron and Rui returned, that's been closer to like 10 to 15. And JJ said very transparently that based on the way the Lakers are running their offense right now, he thinks there's a ceiling to how much Vando can play.
Yeah,
and just with some of the limitations there. So clearly, don't take it at like
JJ's on Twitter.
JJ's on Twitter, but I think there's a lot of people that want Vando to play more, and so JJ's came out and said it though. So like I would pencil Vando in as like a 12 to 15, maybe 18 tops type player in the playoffs. And this could be a matchup where he is very useful. So I guess Vando is. I will retract my statement. Vando is the good matchup for Ant, but if he's playing off the bench 12 to 15, maybe up to 18 minutes, how good is that matchup really? Like Ant might not even be on the floor for that entire time. You could kind of manipulate it where he largely is, but then I mean Gabe's too small. So I think Ant could have a big series against the Lakers. Then the other thing has been the 3-point shooting, where the Lakers 3-point shooting defense, I still think is something that concerns me a bit within their defensive profile. And Minnesota has been a prolific, they've been one of the two best 3-point shooting teams in the league going on 15 plus games. So they generate threes at a high level. Randall and Ant have been finding shooters. They have plenty of guys that are above league average, if not close to 40% 3-point shooters. So Minnesota, this is where I think there's a clear step up in terms of the quality of opponent. And like, to me, this is at least a 6-game series.
Yeah, I would take LA in 6. There's some interesting stuff I think we can add on here with Minnesota. One, kind of look at their analytical profile. You touched on a little bit. The Timberwolves shoot the sixth most threes in terms of like percentage of their percentage of their shots. 42% of the Timberwolves shot attempts are from 3 per clean the glass, which is insane.
It's a lot,
yeah. And for that reason, to your point, like, yeah, it can get kind of concerning with Ant's downhill pressure. Randall, even to a certain extent, be able to, penetrate and find your Jaden McDaniels. I mean, Ant is an elite off-ball shooter. Dante DiVincenzo, Naz Reid. But even touch on the size point that you brought up on, and yes, I do think the Timberwolves is a combination of size, speed, and athleticism. To your point, is something that typically you will look at and say, yeah, this is a team that could match the Lakers and beat fit. So that's why the Rockets would be such a painful series, because the Rockets have the size, speed, athleticism to one kind of outrun the Lakers, and two just make it like a drag. And I think might have been you or somebody else on Twitter made it seem like LA was just like surviving. They were in survival mode. They were just trying to get out of that Houston game alive and with a win. And that's kind of how Houston plays. But Minnesota's size, there's like a big flaw with almost all of them. Rudy obviously have the offensive flaw. I don't think Minnesota offensively in a playoff series against LA can have an elite or be the third best offense or whatever with Rudy Gobert playing 35 minutes in a playoff setting. The problem with that is you need Rudy for your defense because of the rim protection he provides. But also in that same breath, Luka will fish fry Rudy Gobert in pick and roll scenarios if he wants to play drop, or if you try to bring him a little bit closer to the level. And that's how you get scenarios like it was at the end of game 2 last year in the conference finals. So then naturally the solution is, you go smaller, you bring in Naz Reid, you space the floor offensively. But now you can't guard. You don't have the rim protection that you had anymore. And Jaden McDaniels, like I said, isn't a great Luka defender anyway. So I just run into a lot of problems for Minnesota in terms of them guarding LA and how some of their better players, that's not Anthony Edwards, would fare. While Minnesota definitely provides their own set of worries for LA. But I think LA's strengths will be pretty all right in this series against Minnesota.
I'm kicking myself because I had it as my final note of the ultimate takeaway for me or perspective on this series is just I don't trust Rudy Gobert in a playoff series, and I don't trust Julius Randle as a number 2 option.
Yeah.
And I know I made the Randle point a little bit earlier, but that's what it comes down to for me. And I'm curious, what do you think it ends up like? Let's say it's game 5 and the series is tied 2-2 and it's in LA. There's 5 minutes left. The Lakers are up by 6. Who are the 5 players on the floor for Minnesota? And I'm going to assume for the Lakers, it's probably LeBron, Rui, DFS, Austin, Luka. But let's just say like that seems to be their primary closing lineup. Who are the 5 guys on Minnesota matching up with them?
It would have to be, and I want to make sure that like this lineup is actually played a lot. So I'm pulling that up. But off the top of my head, I think it's Julius. Yeah, this lineup's played. Okay, so this lineup is actually the 3rd most played lineup. Julius, Nas, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, actually just swap Jay McDaniels with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So probably like Dante or Ant, Jaden, not Rudy, Julius and Nas probably.
See, that's along the lines of what I was thinking. I wonder if they have to make a decision between Randle and Reed. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I don't know if you can get away with Randle and Reed against Luka, LeBron, and AR.
So you're going even smaller. So like, and
I think so. I think it's something like a big McDaniels, Edwards, DiVincenzo. I think that ends up being your and to be honest, I'd probably lead Nas Reed if we're because the spacing and I think he's better defensively than Randle. But neither one is like I think the Lakers could have their way with either one in there as like the primary big. So like that's like the chess match within this of and I think this is going to be a theme as we move forward with like the rest of the teams where I think what we've seen in the recent wins against the Grizzlies, Rockets, and Thunder is I don't think you can play 2 bigs against the Lakers. I think especially when with the way the offense is functioning, with the way that they are able to target and mismatch hunt, with the way that Rui and DFS can space you out as pick and pop threats or weak side shooting threats, and those guys credibly making shots. Like it's just I don't think like we saw it with Memphis. They had to downsize. They eventually went away from Edey. Houston had to go away from Şengün and Adams. They tried it for a little bit. They went with some zone. They downsized and went centerless for large portions of that 4th quarter. And then OKC, you saw them shift to a lot of single big and even downsize to like J-Dub at 5 or maybe Kenrich Williams, depending on the lineup. So like I think teams that rely more on 2 bigs, especially if one of the 2 bigs or even both are relatively limited defensively, I think those teams are going to struggle to match up with the Lakers. And you're going to end up having to play small ball against them. And if you don't have the personnel to match up with them and like hold your own in small ball, I think you're going to be in trouble. And that's where Minnesota is kind of borderline because I do think like DiVincenzo and McDaniels, like I like those guys as supporting cast players. They're 2-way guys. They're all good shooters to varying degrees. So like I can see it, but I think if you are trying to out small ball the Lakers, like there are very few teams who can match up with them in that setting. And I think the Lakers are going to dictate the terms of the matchups.
Yeah. That lineup that you brought up really quickly has only played 40 possessions this year. In those 40 possessions, they are plus 34.5. So,
okay. So
you could see that.
I mean, look, I will say, I know based on the comments in the chat and just on social media, I know Laker fans I think the average Laker fan would probably have Minnesota lower on this list or higher, depending on how you want to look at it. So I think I get that. I just think ultimately for me, it comes down to the offensive end. And I think the Lakers would be able to play their bigs off the floor and get them to downsize. And I actually think that plays into the Lakers' hands a bit.
Yeah.
Who's your number 3 team?
My number 3, this may or may not be a hot take. My number 3 is the Denver Nuggets.
Okay.
I have Denver at 3. Now, addressing the elephant in the room, if Jamal Murray is healthy, then they probably slide the 4. But I'm not even fully confident in that, honestly. So I do like Denver at 3. And this actually has nothing to do with the fact that the Lakers had the best performance of maybe any team ever guarding Jokic. This has nothing really to do with that. The biggest reason why I have Denver 3 is because Denver cannot guard. They cannot guard whatsoever. Luka, Bron, Austin even. The Nuggets on the season, Denver is, hold on, I just had it. But while I'm pulling this up, Denver defensively, they do a lot of things with Jokic. LA's just going to put Jokic in every ball screen action. And you're either going to get a drop or you're going to get a hedge and put 2 on the ball. And putting 2 on the ball with Luka or Bron, honestly, is just a recipe for success with the Lakers. They get to play the numbers game on the weak side, play 3-on-2, 4-on-3. And that's how you get the performances where Gabe hits 3 or 4 threes, or Dorian Finney-Smith gets a lot of quality threes. Ruby gets to attack closeouts. Austin gets to be a second side creator, attacking closeouts and whatnot. I think we talked about a little bit about, by the way, Denver on the season is 20th in defensive rating. They've been dealing with some injuries recently, but overall in the season, they're a bottom 10 defense. We were talking about the Lakers defense and the way that they give up threes, and how that's something that teams can potentially exploit. Denver is the lowest volume 3-point shooting team in the entire league. And when you talk about ways to exploit the Lakers defense, one of those ways is the 3-point line. And LA's going to give Russell Westbrook the threes. They're going to give Aaron Gordon the threes or whatever. But the fact that, and Aaron Gordon's been a really good shooter this year. But the fact that Denver isn't this super high volume 3-point shooting team, and the fact that Denver isn't, I mean, they played faster this season. Like if we look at pace,
I think last 15 they've been ahead of the Lakers in pace for whatever that's worth. But like it's like 1 possession.
Right. Overall in the season. I mean Denver's what, 8th in pace? Oh wait, hold on. Not even. Yeah, okay. Denver's 8th overall in pace this season. So okay, cool. But I don't think that's how they're going to play in a playoff setting either. The biggest thing of concern is a 7-game Jokic defense. That's the biggest cause of concern. As great as they were in that individual game, I want to say back in January, or was that February even? No, I think it was February because we had Luka.
February 23rd.
Yep. As great as that game was, guarding Jokic, and it was great. Part of me doesn't want to put all my stock into that one game defensively, because over a 7-game series, Jokic is insane. And there was some elements of that performance defensively from the Lakers that was kind of fluky. But at the same time, like JJ has shown, and this is where I think you could probably give JJ Redick the most credit for over his, the season as a rookie head coach. I think JJ has had at least 5 different examples of major games, and he's had a excellent defensive game plan. I thought Boston in January at home was a great defensive game plan. They switched everything to the point where they were saying, Kristaps, go ahead. You could post up on Max Christie. We're going to take away the 3. We're going to win the math game, basically. The Denver game obviously was a great one. The Memphis earlier in the year, where they really just kind of neutralized Memphis's offense, where they were at the peak of their new style and how weird they were kind of playing. OKC yesterday, I thought JJ did a great job. And then there was one more against a really important, I can't think of it now. I did the same thing last night, but the point is, like, there's been 5 games this year against top tier Eastern. Oh no, the Knicks. There we go. The Knicks with no AD. Great defensive game plan, I thought, from JJ. So I think the fact that JJ's shown the ability,
twice with no AD.
Right. Yeah. The ability to game plan defensively, I think, even though there's some elements of that Jokic game that I think is kind of fluky and I don't know that can be replicated, like, I think JJ knows what he's doing in a Denver series, and Denver just can't guard LA.
We have our first disagreement here. So I have the Nuggets at 4, and a different team at number 3. But I'm glad you mentioned the Jamal Murray situation, because I think that's the thing that looms over all of this, where with my ranking, I'm operating as if Murray is going to be back by the start of the playoffs. But Michael Malone said last night that Murray, it started day to day, and now they're unsure if he's going to be back by the beginning of the playoffs. And Jamal Murray's not back, then that completely changes how I view Denver. So I have a bit of a range here. If Murray is relatively healthy and available, I have Denver 4. If Murray is out or compromised, I would put Denver at number 2.
Okay.
And just Memphis being the team that I still would rather face them because they don't have anyone that scares me as much as Jokic scares me. So Denver statistical profile 47 and 32. They are number 4 in the West right now. So tentatively, depending on how the final few games go, Denver has a slight advantage there where it looks like that they might be, if they can take care of business, locked in the 4-5 and potentially avoid the Lakers. Last 15, they are 13th in offense, 21st in defense, and 20th in net rating. I don't know off the top of my head their record. I thought I wrote this down.
Last 15, they're 6-9.
6-9. Okay, so bad. And one note I wanted to make. One note I wanted to make with Denver in their last 15, and this was also the team that, to me, like I didn't want to. So I'll show you for those watching on YouTube. Like I had a whole. You can see here. I had a whole like breakdown statistically where I looked at the biggest trends in Lakers losses. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it was some obvious stuff, but like increased turnovers, fewer free throws, increased offensive rebounds allowed, increased fast break points allowed. And I broke down all these teams and like ranked them both over the last 15 and the course of the season. So I took this ranking very seriously. I put a lot of time and effort into it. But Denver was the toughest team to rank, especially over the last 15, because Jokic has missed 6 games, Murray's missed 7, Gordon's missed 5. So their 3 best players have missed a third of those games or more. And I think this is a top-heavy team that cannot afford to be down their starters.
Yep.
We saw them lose to San Antonio, and San Antonio's tanking, and they still lost to them at crunch time. So optimism, as I just implied, like similar to Memphis, that they're just not playing well right now. They're in a tough spot. We saw last night Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson got into it on the bench, similar to Memphis. Remember, they had I believe it was Desmond Bane and Santi Aldama get into it. So there's just been some weird vibes with Denver, and I thought the Murray update was troubling. Russ is full on Russing right now. He is costing them games in crunch time. He is beefing with the media. I think, as you said, the biggest on court reason, I guess, would just be they cannot match up with the Lakers defensively. We've seen it now 3 times where there was the February 23rd game, but then there was also the game without 6 of the Lakers' top 8 guys. They still pushed that game into crunch time. Lakers almost stole that one. They couldn't guard Austin, couldn't guard Dalton. And then they had the game where Denver didn't have their guys. But again, in theory, the point I made after that game was like, if you're actually trying to optimize Denver's defense against the Lakers, you would take out Murray, you would take out Jokic, and you would go smaller with Gordon and Peyton Watson and Christian Brown and I forgot, and Russ, and there was one other guy who I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but like that was a more small ball switchable lineup, and they still got cooked by the Lakers. So I'm like, whether they go big, whether they go small, I think MPJ was out there.
Yeah,
they can't guard them. So that's my biggest thing. And then concern Jokic and playoff Murray. Like playoff Murray is a real thing. You can look at his numbers over the last few years. He gets better in the playoffs. So that's a real thing. He gets better. I mean, against the Lakers, he looks like Steph Curry. So that's just, it's ridiculous. But like,
I think we've seen that.
For me, Jokic, yeah, like Jokic is just on the level to me of a LeBron, a Steph, a KD. I think Luka's getting to this level as well, where it's just like, I don't want to play that player in the playoffs. They are so good at problem solving. They cause so many problems. And I think the Lakers would win this series and maybe even win it in 5. But I think it's going to be a physically taxing series. If I could avoid Jokic, I would rather avoid Jokic. So to me, part of it is just like a reverence and respect for Jokic that I think he's that great. He's the best player in the league. I think he's the MVP. And I would not want to play that guy in a 7-game series.
Yeah. Denver's tough, and obviously, like I said, the Jokic factor. It's almost to the point that you were talking about, like respect out of Jokic. It's almost like those Bron teams in Cleveland, specifically like 2018, where that's a bad Cavs team, but out of respect,
and they couldn't guard anybody either.
They couldn't guard a soul. But out of respect for LeBron, like, rather not play them until we absolutely have to, because of the fact that LeBron still at the time was the best player on the planet, and you had that.
And that was arguably like peak. I mean, we could have like you could make a case for several versions of like peak Bron, but like 2018 Bron was arguably peak Bron, and I think right now what we're seeing from Jokic is arguably peak Jokic.
Yeah. So Denver.
All right, so who I think I know who your number 4 team is, but who's your number 4?
Fourth for me is the Los Angeles Clippers.
Okay, so we had Clippers and Nuggets swapped, but go ahead. What?
Over the last 15 games, second best offense, best defense. Reasons for optimism. I think the Lakers have really, really good lineup versatility in this series, to where, okay, the Ty Lue is notorious for like wanting to go small, and he'll do some stuff like that. But the Lakers, I think, could kind of one up them in that regard, because Zubac has legitimately taken a leap this season and gone from being a quality starter to an all-star caliber big. I think he's taken a big leap defensively, metrically, and just like watching it. The analytics love Zubac this season, while also like really continue to evolve his chemistry with Harden and things of that nature. But he's going to want to play more in drop. And in a Lakers series where the Lakers are going to spread you out, and for 35 minutes, it's going to be some combination of like Rui or DFS at the 5 and spacing the floor, that can be really, really problematic for the Clippers, which in turn is going to do one of two things. It's either going to force the Clippers to size down, which I think you lose a lot of your physicality, lose a lot of your offensive rebounding, or just rebounding in general with Zubac if you go that route. Or number 2, you start switching a lot more with Zubac, which then it becomes Luka gets to operate from the perimeter and cook Zubac potentially, or Austin even. That's kind of another thing I think. And really, honestly, this is maybe the case for any potential series. I don't know if there's a lot of teams that have a third defender, because in a Laker-Clipper series, if the starting 5 for Clippers is what? It's Harden. Is it done still?
Yeah, it's done. It's
okay.
It's Harden, Powell, Dunn, Kawhi, Zubac.
Right. So Dunn's guarding Luka?
Yeah, he guarded Luka in they had the back-to-back series. He guarded Luka. But he fouled the shit out of him.
That's what I'm saying. So like that's a bad matchup. Okay, so I guess Kawhi is guarding LeBron, which in turn, over a 7-game series, this current version of Kawhi, this current version of LeBron, I would probably still lean LeBron, honestly. Okay, so now who's guarding Austin Reeves? Are we going Norman Powell? Which that's just a bad matchup, I think, for the Clippers. So I think the Clippers, you'll have to go into your bench, and that's where you get creative, in air quotes. You go Ben Simmons, you go Derrick Jones Jr., 2 guys so that offensively you do not have to worry about. I mean, Derrick Jones Jr. is active as a cutter, and he could do some stuff off the catch. He had a really good playoff run last year. But I think the Lakers, the fact that the Clippers don't really have a second or third defender that can play 30-plus minutes and be positive on both ends of the floor, and the fact that the Lakers can really just spread them out defensively and be able to operate, I think, in the way that they want to operate. The biggest cause of concern is they've already been they've been an elite defense basically all year. And metrically, we're going off like what the historical data tells us of what a championship contender is. The Clippers are a championship contender. They are second overall on the season defensive rating. On the year, they're 17th in offensive rating, and there have been outliers where, like Denver 2023, they were like the 15th best defense or whatever. But historically speaking, you basically need like a top 12 offense, top 12 defense. And basically, since Kawhi's came back, they've been that. They've been an offensive juggernaut over the past 15 games. What I said, were they second in offense over this stretch? So the fact that they're now an offensive juggernaut, they have so many offensive options. Kawhi obviously rounding into form here at the perfect time for the Clippers, and he's had a really, really good stretch. Harden proving he's still the system, in air quotes, and in his playmaking and some of the stuff that he
playoff
can,
Harden. quite the system.
Quite the system. Norman Powell, with the increase in volume, being a really, really good scorer for them. And Zubac, again, going back to the all-star level leap, his connection with Harden while also being a pretty decently reliable post scorer against smaller players. I think there's some stuff that the Clippers do really, really effectively. And I think there's this big, I'm sure you've heard it, there's this big talking point about Luka and his rim pressure. And I think in this series, this could be one of the few series where that could be a problem, and where you might see some people running with that take even more. As they see, I told you Luka can't get to the rim anymore, because even though they don't have like a great second or third guy, I do think they could do some stuff to where, Luka hit tough shots over us all series, and that could be somewhat problematic. I would still take LA in like 6, maybe 7, but like there is some stuff that LA does, that the Clippers do, that somewhat concern me.
This would be a tough series. There's no way around it. It would be a fun series for me because I wouldn't have to leave LA, and it would just be going back and forth between downtown and Inglewood. Quickly on the Clippers statistical profile, they are 46-32, number 5 in the West. So right now they'd be playing Denver in the 4-5. Last 15, 12-3. As you mentioned, second in offense, first in defense, first in net rating, and they are 5th in net rating since the All-Star break. So this has been a sustained stretch here of, with Kawhi back, he just played in his first back-to-back, which there are no back-to-backs in the playoffs, but I think that's still a positive sign for them in terms of his health and where he's at. They have been one of the best teams in the league over the past couple of months. I mean, a top 5 team in the league statistically. Optimism, I think there's actually a stylistic thing here that plays into the Lakers' favor a little bit, where outside of Zubats, they are a bit smaller, but I think the Lakers have a bit of a size and physicality advantage within some of those small ball looks. So I could see them playing Zubats 36, 37, 38, maybe even upwards of 40 minutes. He is someone who I think is underrated from like a conditioning standpoint. But for those 10 to 12 minutes or whatever, you could go Kawhi at the 5, you could go Ben Simmons, but I think the Lakers can still at least hold their own. They'll be fine, I think, in those 10 to 12 minutes or whatever. They are a slower team who does not shoot a lot of threes. So that's another thing where I think we've seen teams that can give the Lakers problems tend to be faster, and they tend to shoot a lot of threes. The Clippers don't do either of those. And I think we also have to factor in, like, you can't be confident that Kawhi is going to be healthy for a full 7-game playoff series. Though I will say he's obviously been healthy for a bit now, and he just played in his first back-to-back. Concern, another thing with optimism, you mentioned it. Luka loves killing the Clippers. He's played them 3 times in the playoffs. I would say he's been the best player on the floor in 2 of those 3 series, and he is 1-2 against them. But in arguably all 3 series, though certainly 2 of them, he had a much worse team compared to the Clippers. This would not be the case in this one. I don't love their depth. I don't love their bench. And I think there's a lot of guys they can target defensively, as we saw in the 2 most recent matchups. And then also, you can't factor in or you have to factor in rather, the home game dynamic here. And the Lakers are going to have a home court advantage against the Clippers. They're going to have a bunch of fans in. I'm sure the Clippers will come up with some way to try to keep Laker fans out, but they'll have a lot of fans on the road. And then, of course, at Crypto, in terms of concerns, the toughest part of this ranking for me was Minnesota versus the Clippers, because there are a lot of similarities in their statistical profiles. Those 2 teams, it was really splitting hairs. However, I surveyed a few people around the Lakers and just asked them, I told them about my ranking, and I told them the 2 teams I was struggling with. And between Minnesota and the Clippers, every person I talked to picked the Clippers as the tougher matchup. So for me, that was the tiebreaker. I went with the Clippers as the tougher team. And I think there's an element of, they have Kawhi, who at his peak can still probably reach top 5 levels, though I think maybe top 10 is more realistic. They have Ty Lue, one of the best coaches in the league. They have, as you said, I think arguably a top 5 center in the league in Ivica Zubats. They've been one of the best defensive teams all season. And I think when comparing them to Minnesota, you have like Kawhi versus Ant, let's just say similar levels, although I think Kawhi can get to a higher level. But then looking at like Zubats, Powell, Harden, even in fact, factoring in playoff Harden, I trust those guys a bit more than I trust Minnesota's secondary guys. A lot more, sure. And really, I would almost put Harden as like the 4th guy, to be completely honest. Like I would rather lean more in Zubats and Powell, but I just think the Clippers, I think their ceiling is higher than Minnesota's. I think you could argue Minnesota's floor is higher. But for me, when I do these types of things, I want to lean more into the ceiling in a ranking. And for me, I had the Clippers third. But certainly, if Denver doesn't have Murray, I would slide Denver to 2, move Minnesota to 3, and the Clippers to 4. So by process of elimination, Golden State is number 5 for both of us. Tell me why you put Golden State number 5.
Golden State is the team I think that can provide just the most concerns for LA. And honestly, this sucks. Optimism wise, I think it's really like LA in terms of offensive firepower just has too much still, I think, at the end of the day over a 7-game series. I think you would need Jimmy Butler would have to like be able to ramp up his scoring considerably more for me to take them seriously in terms of like legitimate offensive firepower. Because if we want to talk about fluke, Brad Pajewski is not hitting 8 for 10 from 3 in a game, and they won by 7. Now, in terms of concerns or whatever, I think the lack of a Steph defender, although Gabe potentially could be that, but I think how LA wants to play defensively, I don't really view Gabe as the guy. I think they're going to throw everybody at Steph because they want to switch a ton and, maybe even put 2 on the ball at certain cases. But that doesn't really excite me because then that's how you get Golden State, who is going to shoot a lot of threes. That's how you get some weak side action, 3-on-2, 2-on-1 stuff with Draymond's one of the, if not probably the best short roll playmaker of all time. And then I think going to Golden State's defense, if they play off Draymond and play off Jimmy Butler, you have 2 of the smartest defensive players in the past decade plus or so on the same team. Draymond obviously getting a lot of defensive player of the year buzz right now. And I think the Lakers have struggled, at least recently, with attacking teams that switch a ton. And I think nobody in a playoff setting is going to do that better than Golden State. I think this would be a really, really dramatic 7-game series. And ultimately, I think LA's firepower will be the thing that kind of pushes me over, honestly, in a Laker Warrior series.
I'm with you. I know it upset the chat a bit, saying I would pick the Lakers in 7 over Golden State and not
how dare you
lower
pick the
number,
Lakers to
but
win?
I would still pick the Lake. I think this is a 6 or 7 game series. I could see it going 7. I think so. Quickly again on Golden State's profile, 46-32, number 6 in the West right now. So actually, Lakers and Warriors would be playing right now in the first round, which would be a hell of a first round series. It would kind of remind me of if you remember 2015 when the Clippers and the Spurs ended up matching up, and it was like, these 2 teams are arguably the second and third best teams in the conference. They should not be playing in the first round. That's what this would remind me of if the Lakers and Warriors matched up.
I think these are the second and third best teams in the West.
I agree. I think right now, if I was doing, OKC 1, Lakers 2, Warriors 3, and then number 4, I think would be a healthy Denver, but they're potentially not healthy. So I probably lean Clippers, I guess, at 4. But the West is a bloodbath. There's going to be, we were talking about it before the show. Like, I think there could be like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's 3 7-game series in the first round, depending on how the matchups go. Like, I think whoever plays Memphis is going to win that series in 4 or 5. Outside of the Memphis matchup, I think every other series, depending on the combinations, could go at least 6, if not 7. But with Golden State, last 15, 11-4, 14th in offense. And that number dropped significantly after their loss to Houston last night. 6th in defense, 8th in net rating. They are 3rd in net rating since the All-Star break. And that, to me, I think we've seen this with the Lakers, like going back to 2023. I personally take stock or more stock in like how a team is playing later in the season. I think that tends to matter more. I look at just how good they've been since Jimmy got there, and they basically have been the 3rd best team in the league since Jimmy got there, or at minimum a top 5 team. And that's where, even throwing out the matchups and this and that, it's like just looking at how well they've been playing, that's not a team I would want to face in the first round if I'm the Lakers. Now, optimism, Luka and LeBron have historically fared well against them. We saw Luka in the playoffs against them, but even more recently, last couple of years with Dallas has played well against the Warriors. LeBron has his history with the Warriors and just dominating them regardless of who they have, always making that competitive. And he just thrives in, like, when I think of LeBron bully ball, if you say, like, picture an image of LeBron bully ball, I always think Golden State. And that's just, he did it in Cleveland. He's done it in LA. Steph. He's attacking Steph. He's attacking Draymond. I mean, even Draymond. Like, he could attack anybody on the floor for Golden State. And then I also think LA does have a size and physicality advantage within the small ball looks. So this is one of the few teams that LA actually has, like, within their normal lineups, at least, LA has a size advantage over, like, all these other teams. Clippers have Zubats. Minnesota has their big guys. Memphis has their big guys. Denver has Jokic and Gordon. So this is the one team where, like, even their normal size lineups or their center lineups, Lakers still are just as big, if not bigger, across the board. So I think that would be something that plays into LA's advantage. And I just think star for star, shot for shot, I trust LA's shot making and star power. And I don't think they can match, unless, to your point, Jimmy gets back to being like 2023 Jimmy or 2020 Jimmy, which we have not seen in Golden State. I just don't know if they have that number two guy to similar to Minnesota, honestly, to really, like, help prop up Steph. Now, concerns, as I said, they're the best team over the last couple months among this group. They're also the best at playing small of all these teams. And that's the thing I said at the top, where you have to play small against the Lakers to some extent, and you have to be able to hold your own. And I think Golden State is the only team on this group or within this group that I think can do that against the Lakers. Maybe the Clippers, maybe Minnesota. I don't have confidence in Denver or Memphis going small. But those teams I have more questions about. They're 14-1 with their starters, which I think can't be overlooked. They also play fast. They take a lot of threes. They switch a lot, and they cause a lot of turnovers. So on paper, I think they check a lot of the boxes. Those are a lot of the things that the Lakers have struggled with recently. So for me, Golden State is pretty easily, in my opinion, the toughest potential first-round matchup.
Yeah, it was, for me at least, very, very clearly a 1-5 for me, like easiest and hardest, and they kind of like just nitpicking at who I thought was 2 through 4, honestly.
And I'll even say I went through that exercise of the Lakers' trends in losses and ranked each team 1 through 5 based on, again, last 15 and season long. And Golden State came out on top. Golden State strengths are the Lakers' weaknesses in some ways, but specifically in losses. So, like, if we just look at how the Lakers tend to play when they lose and when they're not playing their best, those are all things that, for the most part, that Golden State can excel in. I think that's the toughest first round matchup. And again, I think my tentative pick right now would be Lakers in 7.
Yeah, I think I would also probably go Lakers in 7. And then even with the point about them adding Jimmy, since getting Jimmy Butler, the Warriors are the 5th best team in the league at getting to the free throw line, which was notably like a big weakness for Golden State in the past. But since adding Jimmy, that's probably the biggest element, along with the defense and the communication. Jimmy's the guy that could legitimately put pressure on the rim and get in foul trouble, get opposing teams in foul trouble.
So to recap, Sean and I largely had the same list with a couple of differences. So we both had Memphis 1. We both had Minnesota 2. You had Denver 3. I had the Clippers 3. You had the Clippers 4. I had Denver 4. We both had Golden State 5. Putting the Lakers aside here quickly, do you have a favorite potential first round matchup that would not include the Lakers?
A first round series I would really, really, really want to see. Denver, Minnesota is always fun. I'd be game for Houston, Golden State. That'd be fun. Basically, Houston against either Golden State or Minnesota, I'd be down with.
Houston, I think whoever Houston plays in the first round will have a shot to beat them, unless it's Memphis. but that makes for a good series because I think a lot of people, like if it's Golden State Houston, a lot of people are going to take Golden State in that. I mean, I would take Golden State in that series, but
I would too.
That would be a tough. To mix it up a little bit, I'll say Warriors Clippers. I think would be a fun series. They had their beef, 10, 11 years ago, and I feel like they've had some wild games over the last couple of years, and just Kawhi versus Steph. You have the little bit of the history there with San Antonio, Golden State, but then you have the differences there. You have the Zubats versus small ball. Zubats versus Draymond. Like, what does that look like? I think that would be a fun one if assuming Kawhi can stay healthy.
Gut instinct, I go Warriors in 7.
That's the way I lean too. I would lean Golden State probably in 7. Yeah. Maybe if they have home court, I'll say 6. But
congrats, Thunder. You're the 1 seed. You could potentially play the Timberwolves round 1.
That would be a fun. I mean, I would like actually it'd be good for OKC. I was talking to someone from OKC yesterday, and they were talking about how they feel like they haven't been tested enough, and I feel like if OKC gets Golden State or the Clippers or the Timberwolves in round 1 and gets, I think Golden State could beat them, but the other two is probably more of a scare. That could be a good thing for them, I guess, down the road.
Yeah.
It's a first world NBA problem. But Sean, I think this is, I think we covered this pretty comprehensively. I think we got, we didn't, I mean, we overlapped a bit with some of the, obviously the rankings, but like the optimism and concerns, but I think we pretty much got everything on both sides of why you should be positive or negative with the potential matchup. So I think final thing before we go, let's go through quick predictions for each of these series. So we already said we both take Lakers over Warriors in 7. I think I'd go Lakers over Memphis in 5. Would you agree with that, or would you say 4?
I would go Lakers in 5. I think there's a game in that series maybe where I think you might even talk about this earlier, where LA's kind of looking ahead to round 2, and Memphis is able to play fast and get out and transition a bit more, and they steal one. So yeah, I would take Lakers in 5.
Then Denver. We'll say with Murray and without Murray.
I'll go Lakers in 6 regardless.
Okay, I'm gonna get a little spicy here. I think I'll say if there's no Murray, it's 5, and if there's Murray, it's 6. Okay. What about Minnesota?
I would go Lakers in 5. I would actually go Lakers in 5 in that series.
I like that, 6. And I think I'm with you with Lakers in 5. And it's funny because I think a lot of Laker fans don't want to play Minnesota. And I think if you're surveying the fan base, they might be 4th on this list. I think maybe even 5th, because I think on paper that what they kind of remind me of. It is poetic because they are the Timberwolves. Like they remind me of like a friendly wolf. From afar, you're afraid. You see the fangs. You see like it's a wolf. Then you get up close and you're like, okay, it doesn't bite. It's not that scary. This will probably get clipped if the Lakers lose to the Timberwolves in round. But assuming they don't,
to somebody else, the wolf might bite, but the wolf is pretty friendly around you.
Yeah. When the wolf sees Luka, they
hey, what's up, buddy?
Exactly. And then final one, Clippers.
Lakers in 6, maybe 7, but I'll go Lakers in 6.
I'm between 5 and 6. I maybe lean 6, especially because I would assume as things are looking, the Lakers are going to have home court. They need to win twice to lock up the 3 seed. I think they'll win twice over their final 4 games. So assuming the Lakers are the 3 seed, they're going to have home court against any of these teams. And it is rare for the home team to win in 6. It's typically 5 or 7. But again, we talked about the home court dynamic, and I'll say Lakers win the first, freeway series, but between the two teams now in 6, and win it at the Intuit Dome, spoiling things for Clippers. But Sean, anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Obviously, check him out on Sports Headlines and the Los Angeles Lakers Network. Check him out On X, it's at Sean _DAVI, I believe.
Yep.
Anything else?
Yeah. No, you hit everything I needed. Appreciate it, bro.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. We will have to get together again during the playoffs, maybe at some point during round one. Remember last year we had a really good conversation during Lakers Nuggets where we broke down all of our adjustments. The Lakers listened and did some of the adjustments, and they had some success, and then they ended up losing at 5. So we'll probably have to do the same thing in round one, and maybe JJ will adapt a little bit faster in that series. But that'll do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for listening and for watching. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and follow and like. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow after Lakers Thunder. I will talk to you then.